Have you ever noticed how some memories from decades ago still feel alive? As if they're breathing inside you right now, while certain moments in the future feel strangely familiar. Almost as if they've been waiting for you all along. That quiet curiosity you feel when you notice this, that's not accidental. It's the doorway we're stepping through together today. Because time is not what you were taught to believe. It is not a straight road you walk down, leaving the past behind and chasing the future ahead. Time is something far more intimate than that. It is not moving past you. It is responding to you. Most of us grew up with a simple picture in our minds. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. And we're trapped in a thin slice called now, trying to manage it all before it slips away. And without realizing it, that picture quietly trains the nervous system to live in tension. We rush. We regret. We worry. We feel late, or behind, or afraid of wasting something precious. But what if that picture was never accurate to begin with? What if time is not a line, but a living field? In modern physics, especially in the quieter, more contemplative corners of quantum theory, time no longer behaves like a one-way street. Experiments and models suggest something strange and beautiful. The universe does not clearly separate past, present, and future the way our minds do. At a deep level, they coexist, not symbolically, not poetically, but functionally. Yet you don't need to understand equations or theories to sense this. You've already felt it in your own life. Think about a memory from your past, something emotionally charged. The event itself may be long over, but the feeling can still surge through your body as if it's happening now. Your heart tightens, your breath changes, your muscles respond. That moment isn't gone. It's active in the field of your awareness. Now consider the opposite. Think about a future moment you feel drawn toward, not one you're chasing anxiously, but one that feels quietly certain. A sense of peace, a feeling of coming home, a version of life where things finally feel aligned. Notice how real it feels, even though it hasn't happened yet. That future isn't imaginary, it's informational. This is where the old idea of time begins to soften. Instead of imagining time as a river dragging you along, imagine it as an ocean, vast, still, responsive. And you are not a passenger in it. You are a point of vibration within it. Your inner state, your emotional tone, your beliefs. Your level of presence doesn't just color your experience of time. It organizes time around you. This is not metaphorical fluff. Even neuroscientists know that time stretches or compresses depending on your state of consciousness. Fear makes seconds feel like hours. Joy makes hours vanish in moments. Presence collapses time entirely. The mystics noticed this long before the scientists did. When Eckhart Tolle speaks about the power of now, he isn't romanticizing the present moment. He's pointing to something radical. The present is not a thin slice between past and future. It is the meeting point where all time converges. From this perspective, the past is not fixed. It is continuously being reinterpreted through your current awareness. Each time you remember something, the brain rewires it slightly. The meaning shifts. The emotional charge changes. In a very real sense, you are revising the past, not by traveling back in time, but by changing the frequency from which you remember it. And the future, it doesn't wait patiently in front of you like a destination on a map. It leans toward you. It responds to who you are being right now. Neville Goddard spoke about this in his own language. He said that states create reality, not effort, not willpower. States? A state is a mood sustained, a self-concept lived from, a quiet assumption about who you are and how life treats you. When you shift states, you don't move into a new future. The future reorganizes itself around your new state. This is why forcing change so often feels exhausting. We try to push outcomes without changing the inner frequency from which we're operating. It's like trying to rearrange reflections in a mirror without moving the body in front of it. Time doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to coherence. When you live in constant mental noise replaying the past, rehearsing the future, time feels heavy, sticky, resistant. Days feel long but unfulfilling. Years pass quickly, yet nothing seems to land. But when you soften, When you allow your awareness to settle into the body, when you stop demanding that life hurry up or fix itself, something remarkable happens. Time begins to cooperate. Synchronicities appear. Things happen at the right moment. Conversations arrive just when they're needed. Opportunities unfold without struggle, not because you planned better, but because you stopped interfering with the natural intelligence of the field. Abraham Hicks often describes this as allowing, not passive resignation, but relaxed alignment, like floating downstream instead of exhausting yourself swimming upstream. Imagine a river that no longer strains against itself. It doesn't rush. It doesn't resist rocks. It curves naturally, finding the path of least resistance. That's how time moves when you're in alignment with your own being. From this view, you are not living on a single timeline. You are constantly tuning into different versions of reality based on your emotional and energetic state. Each choice of perception, fear, or trust, contraction or openness selects a different stream of experience. And the beautiful truth is this: you don't have to fix your entire life to change timelines. You don't need dramatic transformations. You only need to become aware of the state you are inhabiting right now. Are you living as someone who believes time is against you, or as someone who senses that life is unfolding intelligently? Are you bracing yourself against the future, or resting into a deeper rhythm that knows when to move and when to wait? The moment you shift from resistance to presence, time changes shape. It stops feeling like a deadline and starts feeling like a partner. And here is the quiet revelation. At the heart of all this, you were never trapped in time. You were only identified with a narrow way of experiencing it. When awareness relaxes its grip on control, time reveals its true nature, not as a force that ages you, pressures you, or leaves you behind, but as a responsive field that reflects your state of being with astonishing precision. You don't need to chase the future. You don't need to heal the past through endless effort. You only need to come home to yourself here, now, where time gently folds, rearranges, and meets you exactly where you are. And from that place, life begins to arrive. Not sooner or later, but right on time. 1. The greatest misunderstanding humanity has about time. We were taught, almost without question, that time is an arrow. It begins somewhere behind us, flies through the present, and disappears into a future we are supposed to reach before it's too late. This idea is so familiar that we rarely pause to examine it. Yet it quietly shapes nearly every decision we make, every fear we carry, and every pressure we place on ourselves. From a young age, we learn to measure life by clocks and calendars, to divide our existence into what has already happened and what has not yet arrived, and to believe that the present moment is little more than a narrow bridge we must cross quickly before it collapses beneath our feet. Living inside this belief, the human nervous system never truly rests. There is always a subtle sense of being chased. If the past is fixed and gone, then mistakes feel permanent, heavy, and defining. If the future is somewhere ahead, then the present becomes a race, a constant attempt to arrive at a better moment than the one we are in now. Even when life is objectively calm, the mind stays tense, scanning for what might go wrong, calculating how much time is left, whispering that we should be further along by now. This is where the quiet anxiety of modern life is born. Not always loud panic, but a low, persistent pressure, the feeling that something is slipping away, that we are running out of time even when we cannot say exactly for what. People begin to live as if they are late for their own lives. They rush through conversations, through meals, through years, telling themselves they will finally slow down later, once things are settled, once the future arrives. But the future, as imagined through this lens, never truly comes. It remains a moving target, always one step ahead, always demanding more effort, more speed, more sacrifice. When time is seen as an arrow, fear becomes logical. Aging becomes an enemy. Rest feels irresponsible. Stillness feels dangerous. Doing nothing, even briefly, can trigger guilt, because the mind believes that every moment not used productively is a moment lost forever. This belief quietly trains people to override their bodies, ignore their inner signals, and push themselves long past what feels natural, all in service of keeping up with an invisible clock. From the perspective of inner philosophy, this is not a small misunderstanding. It is the root of much human suffering. Pain arises not only from what happens to us, but from how we interpret our position within time. When we believe that time is chasing us, we begin to experience life as a series of problems to solve before it's too late. Joy becomes conditional. Peace becomes postponed. Presence becomes rare. The deeper issue is not time itself, but identification. When awareness identifies with the idea that it is moving through time, it automatically feels limited. There is a beginning and an end. There is a sense of scarcity. There is never quite enough room to simply be. And so the mind fragments life into stories: what I should have done, what I must do next, what might happen if I fail. These stories feel real because they are repeated constantly, but they are built on an assumption that has never been carefully questioned. Those who walk the path of inner inquiry eventually notice something quietly revolutionary. They notice that suffering does not come from time passing, but from resistance to the present moment. The belief in time as a linear force creates that resistance. It pulls attention away from what is here and places it in what is no longer real or not yet real. In doing so, it fractures the only place where life is actually experienced. This is why ancient contemplative traditions, long before modern science, emphasized presence. They did not do so out of poetic preference, but out of direct observation. When attention rests fully in the now, fear loosens its grip. Regret loses its sharpness. The future stops feeling like a threat and begins to feel like an extension of the same intelligence that is alive in this moment. Yet most people never experience this deeply because the belief in linear time feels too solid, too obvious to question. It is reinforced by culture, by language, by schedules, by survival systems built around measurement and prediction. And so the mind assumes that if it does not keep running, it will fall behind. But behind what? Exactly. Behind an idea. Behind a story that has no independent existence outside of thought. From the perspective of someone who has lived through periods of darkness, burnout, and deep inner exhaustion, this misunderstanding becomes painfully clear. There comes a moment when pushing harder no longer works, when striving only creates more strain, and when the future that was supposed to bring relief keeps receding. It is often in these moments of collapse, not success, that the illusion of time as an enemy begins to crack. In that cracking, a simpler truth emerges. Life was never asking to be chased. Time was never demanding to be conquered. The pressure was self-generated, born from a belief that mistook movement for meaning and speed for progress. When that belief softens, even slightly, the body responds with relief. Breathing deepens, shoulders drop, the mind becomes less noisy. Not because problems have vanished, but because the urgency around them has dissolved. Inner philosophy points to this again and again. Suffering is not caused by circumstances, but by identification with thoughts about circumstances. Time, when turned into a thought, becomes one of the most powerful sources of identification. I am running out of time. I wasted so many years. There isn't enough time left. These thoughts feel personal, but they are inherited patterns, repeated so often that they sound like truth. And yet, when one sits quietly and listens beneath the noise, another experience becomes available. Awareness itself does not feel rushed. It does not age. It does not move from past to future. It simply is. Experiences arise within it, change, and dissolve. But the awareness watching them remains untouched by the clock. This is not an abstract idea. It can be felt directly. In moments of deep presence, time seems to fall away. A walk becomes timeless. A conversation feels complete regardless of duration. A single breath contains an unexpected fullness. These moments are glimpses, small reminders that the linear model of time is not the whole story. and perhaps not even the most important part of it. When we begin to see that the belief in time as an arrow is optional, something gentle shifts. Life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like a rhythm. There is movement, yes, but not panic. There is change, but not loss. The present moment expands, no longer a narrow point between two threats, but a living space where meaning arises naturally. The greatest misunderstanding about time is not a scientific error, but an existential one. It is the belief that we are being chased, measured, and diminished by it. Once this belief is questioned, not through argument, but through lived awareness, suffering begins to loosen its grip, and in that loosening, a quieter, wiser way of living reveals itself. One where time is no longer an enemy to outrun, but a field in which life unfolds with its own quiet intelligence. 2. Quantum science begins to question linear time. For a long time, science stood shoulder to shoulder with common sense and said, almost confidently, that time moves in one direction, past behind us, future ahead, present slipping through our fingers. It felt clean, predictable, comforting in a strange way. Even when life felt chaotic, at least time seemed to follow rules. But something unexpected began to happen as physics looked deeper into the nature of reality. The closer scientists examined the fundamental fabric of the universe, the less certain they became about time behaving like a straight line. At the smallest scales of existence, the old picture started to wobble, and with it, the assumptions we quietly built our lives upon. Modern physics, especially quantum theory and relativity, does not describe time as a rigid conveyor belt. Instead, time behaves more like a dimension that can stretch, compress, and bend depending on conditions. This is not spiritual language trying to sound scientific. It is a sober observation that comes from decades of experiments and equations that refuse to fit the old narrative. Einstein was among the first to seriously disturb our certainty. His work showed that time is not absolute. It does not tick the same for everyone, everywhere. Time slows down near massive objects. Time moves differently at high speeds. Two observers can experience the same sequence of events and disagree on their timing. And both can be correct. That alone should have been enough to make us pause and rethink the simplicity of the arrow we had drawn in our minds. Yet the deeper implications took longer to settle in. As quantum physics developed, scientists encountered phenomena that made linear time feel less like a foundation and more like a useful approximation. At the quantum level, particles do not behave like tiny billiard balls moving neatly from cause to effect. Instead, events appear probabilistic. Outcomes seem to depend on observation. And strangely, the order of events sometimes loses its clarity. This is where the idea of time as a flexible dimension begins to emerge. If time were truly a strict sequence, then causes would always precede effects in a clean, unambiguous way. But quantum experiments suggest something subtler, at very small scales. Systems can behave as if the distinction between before and after is blurred, not erased, but softened. One of the ideas that quietly challenges our everyday assumptions is called time symmetry. In simple terms, many of the fundamental laws of physics work just as well whether time moves forward or backward. The equations themselves do not strongly prefer one direction over the other. They do not insist that the past must be fixed and the future must be open. That preference, it turns out, comes more from human experience than from the deepest laws of nature. To someone who has lived their whole life counting birthdays and deadlines, this can sound unsettling, but it is also strangely liberating. If the basic rules of reality do not strictly enforce a one-way flow of time, then perhaps the rigidity we feel about the past and future is not as inevitable as it seems. Another concept that gently unsettles the linear model is what physicists sometimes call the block universe. This idea suggests that the universe can be thought of as a whole structure, where past, present, and future all exist together, much like different locations in space. Just as Paris and New York exist at the same time even if you are standing in only one of them. Moments in time may all exist within a larger framework, even if you experience them sequentially. In this view, time does not flow. We move through it. Or perhaps more accurately, our awareness moves through it. Events are not constantly being created and destroyed. They are arranged. The future is not a blank void waiting to be filled, and the past is not a dead archive sealed away forever. Both are part of a larger structure that consciousness encounters from a particular perspective. This does not mean that everything is predetermined in a simple, fatalistic way. It means something more subtle. It means that the distinction between what has been and what will be is not as absolute as we once believed. The universe may be more like a vast landscape than a ticking clock. What matters here is not whether every detail of the block universe model is correct. What matters is the shift it represents. Science itself is no longer certain that the past is completely finished and the future completely non-existent. That certainty, which once felt unshakable, has quietly dissolved. For someone who has spent years wrestling with regret or anxiety, this shift carries deep emotional implications. If the past is not entirely sealed off, then its grip on us may not be as final as we thought. If the future already exists in some form, then our relationship to it may be more participatory than passive. This does not require magical thinking. It requires a softening of assumptions. Quantum science does not say that you can simply wish events to change. What it suggests, indirectly but persistently, is that reality is more interconnected across time than our everyday intuition allows. The observer is not completely separate from the observed. Measurement matters, perspective matters, and time, instead of being an external ruler measuring our lives, may be woven into the same fabric as consciousness itself. For those who have walked through periods of deep struggle, this perspective resonates in a quiet way. In moments of intense emotional pain, time does not behave normally. Minutes stretch endlessly. The past intrudes into the present with full force. The future feels heavy, predetermined by what has already happened. Yet in moments of deep peace or clarity, time seems to loosen its grip. Hours pass unnoticed. Old memories lose their charge. The future feels open, responsive, alive. These are not psychological quirks to be dismissed. They are lived experiences that mirror what physics is hinting at from another direction. Time is not merely something we measure. It is something we participate in. Science, in its careful and cautious language, stops short of philosophical conclusions. But it leaves doors open. And those open doors matter. They allow us to question the inherited belief that life is a race against an invisible clock. They allow us to consider that the pressure we feel may not be imposed by the universe, but by an outdated model of it. When science no longer insists that the past is entirely over and the future entirely unreal, something relaxes inside us. We are no longer forced to live as fugitives from time. We are invited to live as participants in a larger, more intelligent process. From this view, the present moment is not a vanishing point between two voids. It is an access point, a place where awareness touches a reality that is richer and more layered than linear thinking can grasp. The present becomes less about urgency and more about alignment. This does not remove responsibility. It deepens it. If time is not strictly linear, then how we show up now matters more, not less. Our state of being does not just influence what happens next. It shapes how we encounter what already exists within the field of possibilities. Quantum science, without intending to, invites humility. It reminds us that our intuitive stories about reality are provisional, useful, yes, but incomplete. And when those stories create unnecessary suffering, it is wise to let them be questioned. The greatest gift of this scientific shift is not new technology or clever theories. It is permission. Permission to stop treating time as a tyrant. Permission to loosen our grip on regret and fear. Permission to sense that life may be unfolding with a depth and coherence that cannot be captured by a straight line drawn from past to future. When science itself admits uncertainty about the nature of time, it quietly echoes a truth that inner wisdom has known for centuries. What feels solid may not be fixed. What feels finished may still be alive. And what feels far away may already be closer than we think, waiting not for time to pass, but for awareness to meet it in a different way. 3. Time as a field, not a flow. There comes a point in life, often after we have tried very hard to control outcomes and failed, when a quieter understanding begins to surface. It does not arrive dramatically. It comes slowly, like realizing you have been standing in shallow water while fearing you might drown. This understanding is simple, almost disappointingly so, yet it changes everything. Time is not pushing you forward, it is holding you. A helpful way to sense this is through an image that asks nothing from the intellect and speaks directly to lived experience. Imagine time not as a river dragging you downstream, but as a still lake, wide, calm, present all at once. Now imagine yourself not as someone floating helplessly on its surface, but as a stone gently falling into it. The moment you touch the water, ripples appear. They move outward in every direction, not just forward. They spread behind you, beside you, ahead of you. The lake does not resist the stone. It responds. This is how time behaves when it is understood as a field rather than a flow. A field does not rush. A field does not hurry you along. A field holds potential, responds to influence, and reorganizes itself according to what enters it. When you bring this image into your body rather than just your mind, something softens. You stop feeling like you are being carried away by something larger than you, and begin to sense that you are participating in something responsive. Your inner state is the stone, your awareness, your emotional tone. Your assumptions about life are the weight and shape of that stone. And time, like the lake, responds instantly, not with judgment, but with movement. This helps explain something many people have felt but struggled to articulate. Why does the same past feel different at different times in your life? Why does a memory once filled with pain later feel neutral, even distant? Why does a future that once terrified you later feel gentle, or even inviting? It is not because the past or future themselves have changed in some abstract way. It is because your point of entry into the field has changed. Each state of consciousness creates its own pattern of ripples. When you live in fear, the ripples are sharp and chaotic. They collide with each other. The past feels heavy and intrusive. The future feels threatening and fixed. Time, from this state, appears hostile, as though it is constantly confronting you with evidence that things are getting worse or slipping away. When you live in openness, the ripples are wider and smoother. The past loses its emotional charge. The future feels spacious. Even uncertainty carries a sense of possibility rather than danger. Time, from this state, feels supportive, almost intelligent, as if it is quietly cooperating with your inner alignment. This is not mystical language pretending to be profound. It is an honest description of lived reality. Anyone who has moved through grief, depression, or deep anxiety knows that time itself seems distorted in those states. Days drag, nights feel endless. The future appears locked into a continuation of pain. And yet, when healing begins, when a small shift in inner frequency occurs, the entire experience of time changes without any external alteration. The calendar remains the same. The clock keeps ticking, but your relationship to time transforms. This is because time, as experienced, is not external. It is relational. It exists as an interaction between consciousness and the field of experience. When consciousness changes, the interaction changes. And when the interaction changes, the entire pattern of past, present, and future reorganizes itself. This is where many people misunderstand the idea of changing timelines. They imagine dramatic jumps, sudden miracles, or escaping one life to enter another. But the truth is quieter. Timelines do not change because you force a new outcome. They change because you stop being the same point of vibration within the field. When the stone changes, the ripples change. The lake does not need instructions. A small but profound shift in inner frequency can make a future that once felt inevitable simply fall away. Not through struggle, but through irrelevance. It no longer matches who you are, and another future, one that previously felt unreachable, begins to feel natural, almost obvious. This is why effort alone rarely produces lasting transformation. Effort without inner coherence only creates more disturbance in the field. It is like throwing multiple stones into the lake in a panic, hoping one of the ripples will land where you want. The result is exhaustion and confusion. Inner alignment, on the other hand, is like choosing the stone consciously. Its shape, its weight, its timing. When it enters the field, the response is clear. Those who have lived through long periods of pushing, striving, and forcing eventually discover this the hard way. Burnout is often not a failure of discipline, but a signal that one has been treating time as something to conquer rather than something to relate to. The body, wise and patient, eventually refuses to continue this misunderstanding. In that refusal, a deeper intelligence has room to emerge. When you begin to sense time as a field, patience no longer feels like waiting. It feels like listening. Stillness no longer feels unproductive. It feels responsive. You stop asking, "How long will this take?" and begin asking, "Who am I being while this unfolds?" That question changes everything. Because the field does not respond to urgency. It responds to coherence. It does not reward tension. It mirrors resonance. This is why moments of true change often arrive when you least expect them. After you have let go. After you have stopped obsessing. After you have softened your grip on outcomes. From the outside, it looks like luck or coincidence. From the inside, it feels like timing finally aligning with truth. And this alignment does not only move forward, it moves backward as well. Old wounds lose their power. Past failures reframe themselves as necessary turns. Memories reorganize around a new center of understanding. The ripples travel in all directions, reshaping the entire field. This is not about rewriting history in a fantasy sense. It is about recognizing that history, as lived experience, is never separate from the consciousness that remembers it. When that consciousness changes, the meaning of the past changes, and meaning, more than events themselves, is what shapes a life. Seen this way, healing is not about fixing what happened. It is about changing how you are positioned within the field now. From that new position, the past naturally loosens its grip, and the future rearranges itself without resistance. The simplicity of this truth is often what makes it hard to accept. The mind wants techniques, steps, guarantees, but life, in its deeper intelligence, asks for something quieter: presence, honesty, a willingness to feel what is here without trying to escape into another moment. When you rest in that willingness, even briefly, you may notice something subtle but unmistakable. Time stops feeling like it is moving against you. It feels like it is moving with you. Or perhaps not moving at all, simply holding space as experience unfolds. In that space, you are no longer a traveler racing from past to future. You are a point of awareness within a living field. And the field, responsive and precise, reorganizes itself around the frequency you embody. This is not power in the sense of control. It is power in the sense of harmony, the kind that does not strain, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that feels, at last, like coming home. When time is understood this way, life becomes less about managing moments and more about inhabiting them, less about getting somewhere and more about being someone. And from that place, change no longer feels forced. It feels inevitable, gentle, and deeply aligned, like ripples spreading across a lake that was never in a hurry to begin with. 4. Why the past can change without going back in time. There is a quiet moment many people experience, often unexpectedly. When a memory surfaces and something feels different about it, the event itself has not changed. The facts remain the same, and yet, the emotional weight is no longer what it used to be. What once tightened the chest now feels distant. What once brought shame or anger now brings understanding, or even softness. This moment is subtle, but it carries a profound truth. The past is not as fixed as it once seemed. At first, this can feel confusing. We are taught that memories are records, like photographs stored in an album. The picture may fade with time, but the scene itself is assumed to remain untouched. Yet lived experience tells another story. The same memory, recalled at different stages of life, can feel like an entirely different experience. It can hurt deeply one year, feel neutral the next, and later become a source of wisdom rather than pain. This alone should make us pause. If the past were truly fixed in the way we imagine, this would not be possible. The emotional charge would remain constant. The meaning would stay the same. But it does not. Something in the relationship between you and the memory keeps changing. Modern neuroscience offers a quiet confirmation of this truth. Memory, it turns out, is not stored and retrieved the way we once believed. When you remember something, you are not pulling a file from a mental cabinet and putting it back unchanged. Each act of remembering reactivates the neural network associated with that memory. And in that reactivation, the memory becomes malleable. It is edited, updated, rewritten. This process is sometimes described as reconsolidation. In simple terms, when a memory is recalled, it briefly enters a flexible state before being stored again. And what determines how it is stored is not the original event, but your current state of awareness, your beliefs, your emotional maturity, your sense of safety, your understanding of yourself and the world. The past does not change because the event changes. It changes because you do. This explains why two people can remember the same event in completely different ways, and why one person can remember the same event differently at different times in their life. Memory is not a fixed object. It is a living process. From the perspective of inner philosophy, this has always been known. Even if the language was different, suffering, it was said, does not come from what happened, but from the story we continue to tell about what happened. And that story is not static. It evolves as consciousness evolves. When someone is young and emotionally unprotected, a difficult experience may be stored as proof of unworthiness or danger. The body remembers it as tension. The nervous system holds it as vigilance. Years later, with more awareness and compassion, that same experience may be seen as a moment of confusion, or limitation, or unmet needs. The memory remains, but the meaning shifts. And meaning is what determines whether the past feels like a prison or a teacher. This is why healing does not require reliving the past endlessly. In fact, repeatedly revisiting memories from the same state of pain often reinforces the old pattern rather than releasing it. Healing happens when the present moment becomes safe enough, aware enough, and gentle enough to reinterpret the past without resistance. When awareness changes, the past reorganizes itself around that new center. This is deeply important for anyone who feels trapped by their history. Many people carry the quiet belief that they are broken because of what happened to them. They say, sometimes silently, "This is just who I am now." But this belief rests on a misunderstanding of memory and identity. You are not the sum of what happened to you. You are the awareness through which those events are remembered. And awareness is not static. As consciousness matures, it gains the ability to hold complexity without collapsing into self-blame or fear. It can see context. It can see limitation without condemnation. It can acknowledge pain without becoming it. From this wider view, the past loosens its grip naturally, without force. This is not about denying what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It is about recognizing that the meaning you assigned to it was never final. It was provisional, shaped by who you were at the time, and you are no longer that person. In this sense, you are constantly writing and rewriting your past, not through effort, but through being. Each shift in self-understanding sends new ripples through memory. Old moments find new places within the story of your life. Events that once defined you begin to inform you instead. The nervous system reflects this shift. When a memory is recalled without the original stress response, the body learns something new. It learns that the danger is over. It learns that the present is different. And over time, the physiological imprint of the past softens. This is not wishful thinking. It is biological intelligence responding to updated information. This is why presence is so powerful. When you are fully here, grounded in the body, attentive without judgment, the past cannot dominate in the same way. It can appear, but it does not overwhelm. It becomes one experience among many, rather than the lens through which everything is seen. From this place, a quiet awakening occurs. You realize that you are not stuck in the past. The past is alive within you. Yes, but it is alive in the way a river is alive, constantly moving, reshaped by the terrain it passes through. And the terrain is your current state of being. This realization brings relief that is difficult to describe but easy to feel. The weight of inevitability lifts. You are no longer condemned to repeat the same emotional patterns simply because they once existed. You are no longer defined by moments that occurred under conditions of limited awareness. Instead, you begin to sense a gentle authority returning to your life. Not control, but authorship. You are not rewriting history with your mind. You are rewriting how history lives in you through presence. This also changes how you relate to the future. When the past is seen as flexible, the future no longer feels like a continuation of old wounds. It feels open, responsive, influenced by who you are becoming rather than who you were forced to be. There is a deep kindness in this truth. It does not demand that you fix yourself. It does not ask you to become someone else. It simply invites you to notice that awareness itself evolves. And as it does, everything it touches reorganizes. Those who have walked through darkness know this intuitively. They know that survival required one way of seeing the world, but healing requires another. And when that shift happens, the past does not disappear. It integrates. It finds its rightful place. It becomes part of a larger, more compassionate understanding. The awakening message here is simple, but it carries great freedom. You are not imprisoned by your memories. You are participating in them. And participation implies possibility. Every moment of presence is an opportunity for the past to soften. Every moment of honesty is an invitation for old stories to release their grip. You do not need to go back in time to change the past. You only need to come fully into this moment, where awareness is alive, responsive, and capable of seeing with new eyes. In doing so, you discover that the past was never a closed door. It was a living conversation, waiting for you to arrive with enough awareness to hear it differently. 5. The future is not waiting ahead. It is responding to your present state. There is a moment, often quiet and deeply personal, when the old way of chasing the future begins to lose its grip. It usually comes after years of effort. After doing everything that was supposed to work, after pushing and planning and trying to outpace uncertainty. In that moment, a simple realization arises. Not as an idea, but as a felt truth. The future does not respond to how hard you try. It responds to who you are being. Neville Goddard captured this truth in a single, uncompromising sentence: state creates reality. He was not speaking metaphorically, and he was not offering motivational comfort. He was pointing to a law as precise as gravity, one that operates whether we understand it or not. A state is not a wish. It is not a goal. It is the inner atmosphere you live from, the emotional and perceptual position you occupy so consistently that it becomes normal to you. From this perspective, the future is not a reward you earn through exhaustion. It is a reflection that forms naturally around your present state. Most people live as if the future is somewhere ahead, like a destination on a long road, and effort is the vehicle that will eventually get them there. This belief sounds reasonable, even responsible, but it carries a hidden cost. It teaches the nervous system to live in anticipation rather than presence. It turns life into preparation. It delays peace, and slowly, without anyone noticing, it conditions the mind to believe that fulfillment is always elsewhere. When the future is imagined as something you must reach, the present becomes a problem to solve. You are never quite enough yet. Life is never quite settled yet. There is always another step, another improvement, another version of yourself you are supposed to become before you can rest. And so rest keeps being postponed. But the deeper wisdom, echoed quietly in both inner philosophy and modern understandings of consciousness, tells a different story. The future is not a place you walk into. It is a pattern that organizes itself around your current frequency. This is difficult to accept at first because it removes the familiar narrative of struggle and reward. It suggests that effort alone, disconnected from inner alignment, is not the primary driver of change. And for someone who has survived by trying harder, this can feel unsettling. Yet it is also profoundly relieving. When you observe life honestly, you begin to notice this pattern everywhere. Two people can put in similar effort and receive vastly different outcomes. One seems supported by timing, chance meetings, and unseen cooperation. The other feels blocked, delayed, or constantly catching up. The difference is rarely intelligence or discipline. More often, it is state. A state is the silent assumption you hold about life and yourself. It is the emotional baseline you return to when nothing special is happening. It is the tone of your inner conversation when no one else is listening, and it broadcasts continuously, like a signal, into the field of experience. The future listens to that signal. This does not mean that action is irrelevant. It means that action is secondary. Action expresses state. When state is aligned, action feels natural, timely, and effective. When state is conflicted, action feels forced, repetitive, and draining. The same behavior can lead to completely different results depending on the state from which it arises. Those who have walked through periods of deep frustration often discover this truth through contrast. They remember times when everything felt like a struggle, when every step required willpower, when progress felt fragile and temporary, and they remember other times, perhaps brief but unmistakable, when life seemed to open doors without effort, when the right people appeared, when decisions felt clear, when movement felt supported rather than resisted. The outer circumstances may not have been dramatically different. The inner state was. From the perspective of inner philosophy, this makes perfect sense. Consciousness is primary. Experience follows. The future is not a blank slate waiting for your plans. It is a responsive field that rearranges itself according to coherence. This is why forcing outcomes often produces the opposite of what we want. Pressure sends a signal of lack. Urgency sends a signal of mistrust. Desperation sends a signal of separation. And the field responds faithfully, not by punishing, but by mirroring. More delay, more resistance, more confirmation of struggle. When this pattern repeats long enough, people conclude that life is unfair or random. But there is another explanation, quieter and more compassionate. Life is consistent. It responds to state, not effort. Changing state does not mean pretending everything is fine. It does not mean suppressing emotion or bypassing pain. In fact, genuine state shifts often begin by allowing what is already present without judgment. When you stop fighting your inner experience, something relaxes. And in that relaxation, a new frequency emerges naturally. This is the meaning of allowing, a concept often misunderstood. Allowing is not passive. It is receptive. It is the absence of inner resistance. It is the willingness to be where you are without demanding that it immediately becomes something else. From that willingness, clarity arises, energy returns. Action becomes intelligent rather than compulsive, and as state changes, the future responds almost immediately, sometimes subtly, sometimes unmistakably. Opportunities that once felt out of reach suddenly feel appropriate. Situations that once seemed inevitable quietly dissolve. Paths that once required strain begin to unfold with ease. This is not because the future suddenly decided to be kind. It is because you stopped broadcasting conflict. One of the most liberating realizations for someone who has lived through darkness is that the future is not built by fixing the past. It is built by inhabiting the present differently. When the present state shifts, the momentum of old timelines weakens. They no longer have the same pull because they no longer resonate. In this sense, you do not move toward the future. The future moves toward you. It aligns with you. It adjusts its timing. It presents versions of itself that match who you are now, not who you were trying to escape. This explains why profound change often happens after surrender rather than conquest. After letting go of an identity built on struggle. After releasing the belief that worthiness must be proven. After choosing honesty over performance. From that place, life feels less like a test and more like a conversation. This does not mean that challenges disappear. It means they arrive differently. They come with guidance rather than threat. They invite growth rather than punishment. And even difficulty carries a sense of meaning rather than futility. For someone who has known exhaustion, this shift is unmistakable. The body recognizes it immediately. Breathing deepens. Sleep improves. Decisions feel simpler, not because life has become perfect, but because the inner stance has changed. The future, once feared as a source of uncertainty, becomes something else entirely. It becomes responsive, collaborative, almost intimate. And perhaps the most important insight of all is this: you do not need to know what the future looks like in order to align with it. You only need to know how it feels. Peace, clarity, wholeness, integrity. These are states, not destinations. When you live from them now, the future organizes itself accordingly. This is why visualizing outcomes without changing state rarely works. The image may be clear, but the frequency remains unchanged. True creation happens not when you imagine having something, but when you become someone who expects support, someone who trusts timing, someone who is no longer in conflict with the present moment. From that identity, the future no longer feels like a distant promise. It feels like a natural extension of who you already are. And in that realization, striving softens, fear loosens. Life regains its rhythm. You stop running toward tomorrow and begin meeting it, calmly, where it already exists, waiting not for effort, but for alignment. 6. The present is not a small moment. It is the meeting point of all time. There is a subtle misunderstanding hidden inside the word now. Most people hear it and imagine something very small, almost insignificant, a fleeting slice between what has already happened and what has not yet arrived. The present is treated like a thin doorway you rush through, barely noticing it, because your attention is already pulled backward by memory or forward by anticipation. In this way, the most powerful dimension of experience is quietly overlooked. Eckhart Tolle spoke about this not as a philosophy, but as a direct observation born from deep inner stillness. When he pointed to the power of now, he was not suggesting that we cling to a moment in time. He was pointing to something far more radical. The present moment is not a fragment of time. It is the space in which time appears. To understand this, it helps to look honestly at your own experience. The past does not exist anywhere except as memory arising now. The future does not exist anywhere except as imagination arising now. Both appear within awareness, and that awareness is always present. It never arrives late. It never leaves early. It does not move from yesterday to tomorrow. It is simply here. This is why the present moment is not a point between two lines. It is the field in which both lines are drawn. When people say they are stuck in the past, what they really mean is that certain memories continue to arise in the present with emotional force. When they say they are worried about the future, what they really mean is that imagined scenarios are being experienced now as tension in the body. In both cases, the activity is happening in the same place, the present moment. Seen this way, the present is not small at all. It is vast. It contains memory and possibility simultaneously. It is the only place where experience happens, the only place where meaning is created, and the only place where transformation is possible. This is why Eckhart Tolle emphasized presence not as a technique, but as a recognition. You do not enter the present. You notice that you are already here. What changes is not time, but attention. When attention rests fully in the now, something extraordinary but quiet occurs. The mental narrative begins to loosen. The constant commentary about what should have happened or what might happen loses urgency. The body relaxes. Not because life has become perfect, but because it is no longer being interpreted through resistance. In that relaxation, the sense of time itself begins to change. The present moment expands. It no longer feels like a passing second. It feels like depth, spaciousness, a living stillness in which movement happens without strain. This is the place where past and future lose their power to dominate. From within presence, the past can still be remembered, but it no longer defines identity. It becomes information rather than imprisonment, lessons rather than sentences. The future can still be planned, but it no longer generates fear. It becomes direction rather than threat. The reason this happens is simple, though not always easy to accept. When you are fully present, you are no longer identified with thought, and thought is where time, as a psychological burden, lives. Thought constantly measures. It compares. It evaluates where you are relative to where you think you should be. Presence does none of this. Presence observes without demanding that things be different. And in that observation, a deeper intelligence becomes accessible. This is what is meant when it is said that the present moment is the meeting point of all time. Not because past and future physically collide there, but because awareness, which is timeless, encounters their expressions there. When awareness is absent, time feels oppressive. When awareness is present, time feels transparent. Those who have gone through deep suffering often recognize this truth intuitively. In moments of intense pain, the mind travels endlessly between regret and fear. The present is almost intolerable because it is filtered through resistance. But in moments of deep acceptance, even pain becomes workable. It no longer feels endless. It has edges. It has space around it. This is not because the situation changed, but because awareness returned. In that return, the illusion of being trapped between a fixed past and an unknown future begins to dissolve. You realize that what you truly are is not moving through time. Experiences move through you. This realization does not make you passive. It makes you precise. When you are present, action arises from clarity rather than compulsion. Decisions feel aligned rather than reactive. You stop rushing not because you do not care, but because you can finally feel where movement is actually needed. This is why presence has such a powerful effect on healing. When you are fully here, the nervous system receives a signal of safety. And when the nervous system feels safe, it releases old patterns of defense. Memories surface without overwhelming charge. Emotions move through without getting stuck. The past begins to integrate naturally. At the same time, the future reorganizes itself quietly. When fear is no longer dominating the present, the future no longer needs to mirror fear. When trust begins to live in the body, the future begins to reflect trust. Not instantly, not magically, but coherently. From this perspective, time does not collapse because it disappears. It collapses because its psychological grip loosens. You are no longer living as someone squeezed between what was and what might be. You are living as awareness itself, within which both appear and dissolve. This is the deeper meaning behind the phrase, the power of now. It is not about squeezing value out of a moment. It is about recognizing the timeless dimension of being that has always been present beneath experience. When you touch this dimension, even briefly, something unmistakable happens. The urgency that once drove your life softens. The need to control outcomes relaxes. You still care. You still engage. But the effort is no longer fueled by fear of time running out. Instead, life begins to feel like a conversation unfolding in rhythm. This is especially important for those who feel they have lost time, wasted years, or arrived late to their own awakening. From the standpoint of presence, there is no such thing as being late. Awakening does not happen in time. It happens out of time. The moment awareness recognizes itself, the entire story of delay dissolves. Past years do not disappear. but their meaning changes. They become preparation rather than failure, context rather than condemnation, and the future, once imagined as something you must hurry toward, becomes something that grows organically from who you are now, not from who you were trying to outrun, but from who you have finally allowed yourself to be. When you live this way, the present moment stops feeling fragile. It feels grounded, substantial, alive. You realize that you are not standing on a thin edge between two abysses. You are standing in the only place that has ever existed, the place where life continuously renews itself. In this place, time does not vanish, but it loses its tyranny. It becomes a dimension of experience rather than a source of fear. You still age, you still plan, you still remember, but none of these define you. What defines you is the awareness in which they arise. And from that awareness, the present moment reveals itself not as a passing second, but as the deep, quiet center where all time meets, dissolves, and is reborn as living experience, moment after moment, without hurry, without resistance, and without the need to escape anywhere else. 7. Why living in anxiety makes time feel heavy and slow. There is a particular quality to time when you are anxious. It thickens. Minutes stretch. Hours feel dense, almost resistant. A single night of worry can feel longer than an entire peaceful week. This experience is so common that we rarely question it. Yet it holds a quiet truth about how time is actually lived rather than measured. Time itself does not slow down or speed up. What changes is the way it moves through you. To understand this, we must look gently at the relationship between emotion, the nervous system, and perception. The human nervous system is not just a biological machine. It is an interpreter of reality. It decides, moment by moment, whether the world feels safe or threatening, and that decision shapes how time is experienced. When the nervous system perceives danger, whether real or imagined, it shifts into survival mode. The body tightens, breathing becomes shallow, attention narrows, the brain becomes hyper-focused on potential threats. This is not a flaw. It is an ancient intelligence designed to protect life. But survival mode changes how time is perceived. In fear, the brain begins to stretch time. It does this so you can react more quickly, notice more details, and prepare for danger. Seconds feel longer because the brain is processing more information per moment. What feels like time dragging is actually the nervous system amplifying awareness in a very narrow, tense way. This is why moments of fear during accidents or emergencies are often described as happening in slow motion. Time did not actually slow down. Consciousness narrowed and intensified. When anxiety becomes chronic, this state never fully switches off. The body lives as if something is always about to happen. The future feels threatening. The present feels unsafe. And time begins to feel like a burden rather than a flow. This is how many people unknowingly live their lives. They wake up already bracing. Their minds run ahead, rehearsing problems that have not yet arrived. The body follows the mind, tightening and preparing. In this state, time feels oppressive. Days feel long but unfulfilling. Life feels like something to endure rather than inhabit. From the inside, it feels like time itself is heavy. But time is not doing this to you. Your nervous system is. When fear dominates, the present moment becomes intolerable because it is filled with anticipation. The mind is not here. It is scanning ahead. The body responds as if the imagined future is already happening. This creates a strange paradox. You are physically in the present, but experientially living in a future that does not exist. And because that future is imagined through fear, time stretches endlessly. Contrast this with moments of deep calm or presence. Think of times when you felt truly absorbed. Perhaps you were walking in nature, listening deeply to someone you love, or simply sitting quietly without needing anything to change. In those moments, time feels light. Hours pass unnoticed. There is no struggle with duration. This is not because time moved faster, It is because resistance dissolved. When the nervous system feels safe, attention broadens, breathing deepens, the mind stops scanning for danger. Consciousness becomes spacious, and in that spaciousness, time loses its weight. From this state, time feels like a companion rather than an enemy. The key insight here is simple but often overlooked. Time does not treat you differently depending on who you are. It is neutral. What changes is the frequency through which you experience it. Fear contracts awareness. Presence expands it. In contraction, every moment feels dense because you are fighting what is. In expansion, moments feel light because you are allowing what is. The same clock ticks in both states, but the lived experience is completely different. This is why advice that focuses only on managing time rarely helps anxious people. The problem is not the schedule. It is the state. You cannot relax time by organizing it better. You relax time by settling the nervous system. Those who have walked through deep anxiety often learn this not from theory, but from exhaustion. There comes a point when the body simply cannot maintain vigilance, when it collapses into stillness, not by choice, but by necessity. And in that collapse, something surprising happens. Time softens. The mind may still worry, but the body begins to rest. And in that rest, even briefly, time feels different, less hostile, less demanding. This is often the first glimpse of a deeper truth. Time was never the problem. The fight against the present was. Inner philosophy has long pointed to this. Suffering, it says, is resistance to what is. Anxiety is resistance projected into the future. Regret is resistance projected into the past. Both are forms of leaving the present moment. When you return to the present, not by force but by allowing, resistance loosens. And when resistance loosens, time regains its natural rhythm. This does not mean fear disappears overnight. It means fear is no longer running the experience. You may still feel concern, but it no longer stretches time into a prison. It becomes information rather than domination. From this place, you begin to see that time has always been responsive, not punitive. It mirrors your inner state with remarkable precision. When you are tense, it feels tense. When you are rushed, it feels rushed. When you are open, it feels open. This mirroring is not personal. It is mechanical in the most compassionate sense, like an echo responding to sound. Time responds to consciousness, and here lies a profound relief. If time feels heavy, it is not because your life is broken or behind. It is because your system is tired of being afraid. The solution is not to hurry more. It is to soften. Softening does not mean giving up. It means letting the body know it is safe now. It means allowing the breath to deepen without forcing it. It means noticing where tension lives and meeting it with patience rather than judgment. As this happens, gradually and naturally, time begins to feel lighter. You still have responsibilities. You still move through days and years, but you no longer feel hunted by them. You feel accompanied. Those who have lived long enough know this truth intimately. They know that the most meaningful moments were not rushed. They unfolded when attention was present, and the most painful periods were not always the busiest, but the most anxious. This understanding brings a quiet wisdom. You stop blaming time for how you feel. You stop fighting the clock. You begin to listen to your inner rhythm. From that listening, life regains its pace. Not faster, not slower, truer. Time, in its neutrality, meets you exactly where you are. It does not judge your fear or reward your calm. It simply reflects, and when you learn to meet it from a place of presence rather than anxiety, it stops feeling like something you must survive. It becomes something you can finally live within, moment by moment, without weight, without urgency, and without the constant sense of being late for your own life. 8. The state of allowing lets time reorganize itself. There is a moment, often after years of effort and quiet disappointment, when a person realizes that pushing harder is no longer working, not because they are weak, but because something deeper is asking to be understood. This realization does not come with fireworks. It arrives softly, sometimes through exhaustion, sometimes through stillness, sometimes through a simple question that refuses to go away. What if life is not meant to be forced? Abraham Hicks often speaks about allowing, not as a spiritual slogan, but as a fundamental orientation toward life. Allowing does not mean giving up. It does not mean lowering standards or abandoning desire. It means releasing resistance to what already is, so that the natural intelligence of life can move again. And when resistance softens, time itself begins to change its behavior. Most people unknowingly live in opposition to time. They push against it, rush it, argue with it, demand that it move faster or slow down according to their preferences. They carry a constant sense of urgency, as if life were late, as if something essential might be missed unless they stay vigilant. This urgency is rarely questioned. It feels responsible. It feels necessary. But it comes at a cost. When you are constantly trying to push life forward, your nervous system stays tense. The body receives the message that the present moment is insufficient, incomplete, or unsafe. And from that state, time feels resistant. Plans stall. Delays multiply. Everything seems to take longer than it should. The more you push, the more friction you encounter. This is not punishment. It is feedback. Life responds to resistance with resistance, not out of cruelty, but out of coherence. A system under pressure tightens. A system allowed to relax finds its own rhythm. The state of allowing is the moment you stop trying to make time behave and begin listening to how it wants to move. It is the moment you recognize that life has its own timing, and that your role is not to dominate it, but to align with it. Those who have tasted this state know how quietly powerful it is. When resistance drops, even slightly, things begin to line up without effort. Conversations happen at the right moment. Information arrives when it is needed. Opportunities appear not because you chased them, but because you were available to notice them. This is what many people call perfect timing, though it is rarely perfect in the way the mind imagines. It does not mean everything goes according to plan. It means events unfold with a sense of rightness. Even when they challenge you, there is less struggle, less forcing, less sense of swimming upstream. From the perspective of lived experience, allowing feels like letting the body breathe again. Shoulders drop, the jaw softens, the inner dialogue quiets. You stop rehearsing the future compulsively. You stop revisiting the past to fix it. And in that quiet, something larger begins to move. Time, which once felt like an obstacle, begins to feel like a collaborator. This is not mystical, it is practical. When you are no longer trying to control every outcome, you become more perceptive. You notice subtle cues. You sense when to act and when to wait. Your decisions are no longer driven by panic, but by resonance. And because of this, fewer actions are needed to create meaningful change. This is why allowing often looks like doing less and receiving more. Not because effort has disappeared, but because wasted effort has been removed. People who have lived long enough recognize this pattern in hindsight. They look back and see that the most important events in their lives were rarely the ones they forced. Relationships that mattered began unexpectedly. Opportunities that changed everything appeared when they were not actively searching. Solutions emerged after they stopped obsessing. At the time, it may have felt like coincidence. Later, it feels like coherence. When you stop trying to make life go faster, time begins to organize itself around your inner state. Things that were premature fall away. Things that were delayed catch up. Not because the universe suddenly favors you, but because you are no longer interfering with its rhythm. Interference is subtle. It often shows up as impatience, self-doubt, constant evaluation of progress, or the belief that something must be wrong if results are not immediate. These states create inner noise, and noise disrupts timing. Allowing quietens that noise. From the inside, allowing feels like trust, but not blind trust. It is an embodied trust, one that comes from recognizing how much energy was wasted in resistance. It is the trust of someone who has tried control and found its limits. This trust does not deny fear. It simply refuses to let fear dictate every move. In this state, many people notice a change in how time feels. Days become fuller without being heavier. Waiting no longer feels like punishment. Pauses feel purposeful rather than empty. Even uncertainty carries a sense of movement rather than stagnation. This is because time is not being measured against expectation anymore. It is being lived. One of the great misunderstandings about allowing is the idea that it leads to passivity. In reality, it leads to precision. When you are no longer scattered by resistance, your actions become cleaner. You say yes when it matters. You say no without guilt. You move when movement is natural. You rest when rest is intelligent. This kind of responsiveness cannot be forced. It arises when inner alignment replaces inner conflict. And alignment is what creates synchronicity. Synchronicity is not magic. It is what happens when your internal state matches the conditions of the moment. When you are present, open, and receptive, you notice connections that were always there. You recognize timing that was previously obscured by urgency. Many of the right place at the right time moments in life are not the result of planning, but of availability. You were available because you were not rushing. You were not distracted by worry. You were not insisting that life conform to a timeline created by fear. From this perspective, allowing is not about waiting for life to do something. It is about becoming the kind of presence that life can move through. This has profound implications for healing, creation, and peace. When you stop resisting where you are, you stop sending the message that something is wrong. The nervous system begins to relax. And when the nervous system relaxes, perception widens. You see more options. You feel more supported. Time no longer feels like an enemy to outsmart. Those who have lived through burnout often discover this truth painfully. But honestly, they realize that their sense of urgency was not making life richer. It was making it smaller. When they finally slow down, not as a strategy but as a surrender, life begins to breathe again. In that breathing, timing returns. The state of allowing does not guarantee comfort, but it does restore flow. And flow is what allows life to organize itself intelligently. Without flow, everything feels stuck. Allowing is the doorway back into that flow. It is the moment you stop gripping the steering wheel so tightly and allow the road to reveal itself, one turn at a time. You are still driving. You are still responsible. But you are no longer fighting the journey. And in that shift, something deeply reassuring becomes clear. Life was never late. It was waiting for you to stop rushing. When resistance falls away, time no longer needs to teach through delay. It can cooperate through alignment. Events line up not because you demanded them, but because you became ready to receive them. This readiness is quiet. It does not announce itself. It feels like calm attention, like being at ease with not knowing everything yet, like trusting that movement will happen when it is true. From this place, the phrase "everything happens at the right time" stops sounding naive. It becomes experiential, not because everything turns out the way you want, but because everything arrives when you can actually meet it. And that is the deepest gift of allowing. It does not give you control over time. It gives you relationship with it. A relationship built on listening rather than forcing, on resonance rather than resistance. When you live this way, time stops feeling like something to manage. It becomes something to move with. And in that movement, life reveals its quiet intelligence, unfolding not faster or slower, but exactly as needed, moment by moment, without strain, without hurry, and without the constant need to prove that you are doing enough. 9. You are living on multiple timelines at the same time. There is a moment of quiet clarity that arrives when you stop asking why life feels inconsistent and begin noticing how different your inner world feels from one day to the next. One morning, everything seems heavy and fixed, as if your path has already been decided. Another morning, with no obvious change in circumstances, the same life feels open, responsive, even full of possibility. Nothing outside has shifted dramatically, yet everything feels different. This is often the first intuitive encounter with the idea of timelines. The word timeline can sound technical or abstract, but the lived experience of it is deeply human. A timeline is not a science fiction tunnel you jump into. It is a pattern of experience shaped by perception, emotion, and expectation. It is the way life unfolds when filtered through a particular inner state. And the quiet truth is this: you are always living within multiple potential timelines. Not sequentially, but simultaneously. At any given moment, countless versions of experience are available, not as fantasies, but as real possibilities organized within the field of time. Which one you experience is not determined by fate or luck. It is determined by resonance. Think of a radio with many stations broadcasting at once. The music is already there. You do not create it by turning the dial. You simply tune into it. In the same way, timelines are already present as patterns of possibility. Your inner state determines which one becomes audible, visible, and real to you. This is why two people can stand in the same situation and live in entirely different realities. One experiences limitation. The other experiences opportunity. One sees threat. The other sees information. The difference is not intelligence or circumstance. It is emotional orientation. Each emotional choice you make is not small. It is not merely a reaction. It is a tuning mechanism. When you choose fear, even unconsciously, you align with a timeline where fear makes sense. Events begin to confirm it. Delays appear. Conflicts repeat. The world seems uncooperative, not because it is hostile, but because it is coherent with the frequency you are broadcasting. When you choose openness, trust, or grounded presence, you align with a different timeline. In that timeline, the same world responds differently. Solutions appear. Conversations soften. Movement feels supported rather than resisted. Again, this is not reward or punishment. It is resonance. This is where many people misunderstand the idea of shifting timelines. They imagine dramatic leaps, sudden transformations, or escaping one life to enter another. But lived reality is subtler and more honest. You do not jump into a new timeline. You gradually recognize which one you are already participating in. Recognition is key. The moment you notice your emotional state, without judgment, you gain information about the timeline you are currently inhabiting. Anxiety tells you you are tuned into a future-oriented, threat-based timeline. Resentment signals a past-oriented timeline where old meaning is still active. Calm presence indicates alignment with a timeline where the present moment is sufficient. None of these are wrong. They are signals. What matters is not forcing yourself into a better state, but becoming aware of the one you are in. Awareness itself begins the shift. When you see the pattern, you are no longer fully inside it. This is why awareness is often described as the doorway between timelines. It does not push you somewhere else. It reveals where you are. Those who have lived through cycles of repeated struggle often recognize this pattern only in hindsight. They look back and realize they were not trapped by circumstances, but by a consistent emotional stance. The same fears led to the same reactions, which led to the same outcomes, reinforcing the belief that nothing could change. And then, sometimes through exhaustion or insight, that stance softened. Perhaps they stopped fighting themselves. Perhaps they allowed uncertainty instead of demanding certainty. And quietly, life began to respond differently. Not instantly, not magically, but consistently. This consistency is important. Timeline shifts are rarely dramatic. They are cumulative. Each small emotional choice adds weight to a particular pattern of experience. Each moment of presence strengthens one timeline and weakens another. This is why sustainable change never comes from pretending to feel something you do not. It comes from honest awareness and gentle redirection. You do not leap from fear to bliss. You move from fear to curiosity, from curiosity to openness, from openness to trust. Each step is a tuning adjustment. From the perspective of someone who has walked through darkness, this understanding brings relief. You realize that you were never broken. You were consistent. And consistency, once understood, can be changed. The idea that you are living on multiple timelines at once does not remove responsibility. It deepens it. You begin to see that your emotional life is not private or inconsequential. It is creative. It shapes the path you experience as real. This does not mean blaming yourself for hardship. Many emotional patterns were learned for survival. Fear kept you safe once. Control helped you cope. These states were not mistakes. They were intelligent responses to limited conditions. But conditions change. Awareness grows, and the timelines that once made sense begin to feel restrictive. When this happens, people often say they feel out of alignment. What they are really sensing is resonance shifting. The timeline they have been living on no longer matches who they are becoming. This discomfort is not a failure. It is an invitation. An invitation to listen more closely to emotional guidance. An invitation to notice when your inner state is pulling you toward repetition versus growth. An invitation to recognize that the future you fear is not inevitable, but conditional. From this view, the future is not a fixed destination waiting for you. It is a set of potential trajectories responding to who you are being now. Each emotional choice, each assumption about life, each moment of presence or resistance nudges you toward one trajectory or another. And the most compassionate truth of all is this: you do not need to know where each timeline leads in order to choose wisely. You only need to notice how each one feels in your body. Fear feels tight. Presence feels open. Resentment feels heavy. Acceptance feels spacious. These sensations are not random. They are navigational. When you begin to trust this inner navigation, life becomes less confusing. You stop asking which choice is right and start asking which choice feels aligned. Over time, this sensitivity grows. You catch yourself earlier. You adjust more gently. And the timeline you inhabit begins to reflect that care. This is not about perfection. You will still have moments of contraction. Old patterns will still arise. But they no longer define the path. They become temporary weather rather than permanent climate. From this place, the idea of timelines stops feeling overwhelming and starts feeling empowering. You realize that you are not trapped in one story. You are participating in many, and your awareness determines which one becomes dominant. You do not escape timelines. You outgrow them. As awareness deepens, the timelines based on fear lose energy. They are no longer fed. They fade. Not dramatically, but naturally, and timelines based on trust, clarity, and presence gain strength. Not because you forced them, but because you became congruent with them. This congruence is what many people call alignment. It is the feeling of being in the right place. Not because everything is easy, but because nothing is being resisted internally. And perhaps the most healing realization of all is this: you have never been lost. You have always been resonating. Every experience you have had made sense within the timeline you were living. Now, with awareness, you are free to choose again, not by jumping somewhere else, but by recognizing where you are and gently tuning toward what feels true. Life does not require dramatic leaps. It responds to subtle shifts. And as you learn to sense which timeline you are inhabiting in each moment, you stop feeling like a victim of circumstance and start feeling like a participant in a living, responsive field. From that place, the future no longer feels imposed. It feels invited. And the present becomes what it has always been, the tuning point where all timelines are quietly selected, moment by moment, through the simple, profound act of being aware. 10. The greatest awakening. You are not trapped in time. There comes a moment in a person's life when the struggle with time quietly ends. Not because everything is resolved, not because answers suddenly appear, but because something far deeper shifts in perception. The question is no longer how to outrun time, fix the past, or secure the future. The question dissolves altogether. And in that dissolution, a simple truth reveals itself. You were never trapped in time. You were only trapped in a way of seeing. When this realization begins to settle, life immediately feels lighter. Not easier in the superficial sense, but lighter in the body, lighter in the breath, lighter in the way experiences are held. The constant pressure to catch up relaxes. The invisible stopwatch that once governed your decisions loses its authority. You begin to notice how much of your exhaustion was not caused by circumstances, but by the belief that you were late, behind, or running out of something essential. This belief is subtle. It rarely announces itself loudly. It hides inside phrases like, "I should be further along by now," or "I don't have time," or "if only I had known earlier." These thoughts feel personal, but they are inherited. They come from a collective misunderstanding about time that has been passed down for generations. When that misunderstanding loosens, even slightly, the emotional landscape changes. You stop relating to life as a race with winners and losers. You stop measuring your worth against imagined timelines. You stop revisiting the past to punish yourself for what could not have been known at the time. This is not indifference. It is clarity. As your relationship with time shifts, urgency gives way to precision. You still act. You still care. You still plan and remember. But the frantic edge disappears. Action comes from alignment rather than fear. Decisions arise from presence rather than pressure. One of the most healing aspects of this awakening is the end of the phrase, "It should have been different." That sentence carries enormous weight. It implies that reality made a mistake, that you missed your chance, that life somehow failed to follow the correct script. When you let go of this belief, not intellectually but experientially, a deep compassion emerges for your own journey. You begin to see that every stage of your life unfolded from the level of awareness available at the time. You did not choose blindly. You chose from what you could see then. And as awareness expanded, choices naturally changed. From this understanding, regret softens, not because the past is denied, but because it is understood. It becomes part of a continuous unfolding rather than a permanent flaw in the story. At the same time, the fear of being late fades. You realize there is no universal schedule you failed to meet. There is no external authority keeping score. Awakening does not operate on deadlines. It arrives when resistance gives way to readiness. This is why people often awaken later in life and feel a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Relief that the pressure is gone, disbelief that it ever felt so real. They look back and see how much energy was spent fighting an imaginary clock. The deepest shift, however, is not psychological. It is experiential. You begin to sense yourself not as someone moving through time, but as someone standing within it, not pushed from behind by the past or pulled forward by the future, but grounded in a center that feels strangely stable regardless of what is happening. This center is not static. It is alive. It is responsive, but it is not hurried. From here, time behaves differently. It no longer feels like a force acting upon you. It feels like a dimension you are participating in. Experiences come and go, but you are no longer carried away by them. You witness movement without losing yourself to it. This is what it means to stand in the center of the time field. From the center, you can feel the past without being dragged into it. You can consider the future without being consumed by it. Both exist as information, not as threats. They inform, but they do not dominate. Life becomes less about survival and more about participation. This does not remove pain or uncertainty, but it changes your relationship to them. Difficulty is no longer interpreted as evidence that something has gone wrong with time or with you. It becomes part of a larger rhythm that includes rest, growth, contraction, and release. Those who have walked through deep darkness recognize this rhythm instinctively. They know that the hardest moments often carried the seeds of the greatest clarity, not because suffering is noble, but because it forced a surrender of false timelines. In surrender, the illusion of being trapped collapsed. When you no longer believe you are trapped in time, patience emerges naturally. Not the kind of patience that waits grudgingly, but the kind that trusts movement. You stop asking when things will change and start noticing how they are changing. You become attentive rather than anxious. From this attentiveness, timing reveals itself. You sense when to act and when to pause. You no longer mistake stillness for stagnation or movement for progress. You feel the difference between activity driven by fear and action arising from clarity. This sensitivity is not learned from books. It comes from listening deeply to experience, from noticing when life flows and when it resists. And over time, you realize that resistance almost always arises when you are trying to force time rather than meet it. The greatest awakening, then, is not about transcending time. It is about ending the war with it. When the war ends, life regains its natural pace. Not too slow, not too fast, just honest. You still age. You still move through seasons. You still make plans and remember stories. But none of these define you. They happen within you. You are no longer a leaf caught in the current, hoping not to be swept away. You are the riverbed, steady enough to allow movement without losing form. From this place, meaning deepens. Moments are no longer evaluated solely by productivity or outcome. They are lived, fully, without the constant need to justify their existence. You stop asking whether you are ahead or behind and start asking whether you are present. And presence, once tasted, becomes its own answer. This is why the awakening feels so quiet. There is no dramatic announcement, no final achievement, just a gradual easing of effort, a sense of being at home in your own life. The clock still ticks, but it no longer defines your worth. The calendar still turns, but it no longer threatens you. Time becomes a context rather than a judge. And perhaps the most surprising realization of all is this: you were never meant to outrun time or master it. You were meant to inhabit it consciously. When you do, life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something that happens with you. From the center of the time field, you see clearly that nothing essential was ever lost. Nothing meaningful arrived too late. And nothing real needs to be rushed. Everything unfolds as awareness meets experience, moment by moment, without hurry and without regret. And in that understanding, the deepest peace arises. Not because time has stopped, but because you have stopped fighting, stopped measuring, stopped believing that your life exists somewhere other than where you are now. Here, in this center, time no longer pulls you apart. It holds you, and that is the freedom that was always waiting. Not in the future, not in the past, but in the simple, profound recognition that you have never been trapped at all. When you change your frequency, time changes its shape. As we come to the end of this journey together, it may be helpful to let everything soften for a moment, not to summarize with effort, not to hold on to ideas, but to allow a single image to remain. Imagine time not as a line you walk along, not as a clock that measures you, but as a wide piece of fabric laid gently across existence. It has folds, curves, layers, and your consciousness is not trapped inside it. Your consciousness is the hand that touches it. When a hand moves across fabric, the fabric does not resist. It responds. It gathers where the hand gathers it. It smooths where the hand releases. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. The shape changes not because the fabric is controlled, but because it is engaged with awareness. This is how time behaves in relation to consciousness. You do not need to repair the past. You do not need to manage the future. Those impulses come from the same misunderstanding, the belief that time is something separate from you, something that must be fixed, outrun, or negotiated with. But when you see time as a responsive field rather than a rigid structure, that effort becomes unnecessary. The past does not ask to be rewritten. It asks to be reheld, and the future does not ask to be secured. It asks to be met from a different state of being. This is the heart of the message. Simple but profound. Your state of consciousness is the shaping force, not your plans, not your regrets, not your strategies, your state. When the state shifts, time reshapes itself naturally. This does not happen dramatically. It happens quietly, often unnoticed at first. You begin to feel less urgency, less pressure to catch up, less obsession with what should have happened by now. The internal clock that once demanded constant movement begins to slow, not because life has stalled, but because you are no longer fighting it. From this place, something unexpected occurs. Time, which once felt like an enemy, becomes an ally. You notice that things arrive when you can actually receive them. Conversations happen when you are ready to listen. Opportunities appear when you have the capacity to respond. Even challenges come with a sense of timing, as if life waited until you had enough ground beneath you to face them. This is what people often describe as life falling into place. Though nothing has been arranged artificially, it is simply coherence returning. When you are deeply present, time no longer chases you, it walks with you. Presence changes the texture of time. It thickens the now, not in heaviness, but in richness. Moments feel fuller. Experiences feel complete. You stop rushing through days, hoping for something better, and begin to notice that life is already here, unfolding with intelligence. This does not mean everything becomes comfortable. It means everything becomes workable. From presence, even uncertainty loses its sharp edge. You realize that not knowing is not a flaw, but a space where new forms can emerge. And time, instead of punishing you for not knowing, supports the unfolding of understanding. This is why the invitation at the end of this exploration is not to believe anything. Belief belongs to the mind, and the mind will always argue. The invitation is to experience. Notice what happens when you stop treating time as a problem. Notice what happens when you no longer say, "I should be further along," and instead ask, "Where am I now?" Really, notice how the body responds when it is no longer being rushed internally. Notice how decisions feel when they are not being made against a deadline created by fear. These are not small observations. They are doorways. When you observe gently, without trying to manipulate the outcome, you begin to see patterns. You see how tension distorts timing. You see how relaxation invites movement. You see how forcing creates delay, and how allowing creates flow. And slowly, quietly, trust grows. Not blind trust in outcomes, but trust in the process of alignment. This trust is not naive. It is earned. It comes from seeing again and again that life responds differently when you do. That when you inhabit the present more fully, events rearrange themselves with less resistance. That when you stop pushing, something else begins to move. The fabric of time folds differently around a calm hand than around a clenched fist. This is why effort alone has never been enough. Effort without alignment only tightens the fabric. It creates creases of struggle. Effort that flows from presence, however, feels almost weightless. It does not strain. It does not exhaust. It feels like a natural extension of being. In this way, the future stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a continuation. Not a continuation of fear or habit, but a continuation of awareness. And the past, which once felt like a burden, finds its place. It becomes context rather than constraint. It no longer defines the shape of what is possible. It simply informs it. This is the quiet freedom many people spend their lives searching for, without realizing it was never located in time at all. Freedom is not found by escaping the past or securing the future. It is found by standing fully here, where both lose their grip. From here, life feels less like a sequence of hurdles and more like a conversation. You respond, life responds, and the rhythm that emerges is not imposed. It is discovered. This rhythm cannot be taught. It can only be felt. That is why the invitation now is gentle. Do not try to remember everything you have heard. Do not turn these ideas into another project. Simply notice. Notice how time feels when you breathe more deeply. Notice how moments behave when you stop rushing them. Notice how life responds when you are no longer arguing with where you are. You may find that things begin to arrive on time in a way that cannot be scheduled. You may notice that delays no longer feel like punishments, but like pauses with purpose. You may discover that what once felt late now feels precise. This is not because time changed. It is because your relationship to it did. And that relationship is always available to be renewed. You do not need a special practice. You do not need perfect conditions. You only need willingness. Willingness to meet this moment without trying to escape it. willingness to feel rather than fix, willingness to trust that awareness itself knows how to move. When you live this way, even briefly, something settles inside, a sense of being held rather than pushed, a sense of standing within life rather than being swept along by it. Time, once feared, becomes spacious, not empty, but open. And in that openness, you may realize something quietly astonishing. Nothing essential was ever missing. Nothing meaningful was ever late. Everything you needed arrived when you could actually meet it. This realization does not make life predictable. It makes it alive. So the closing invitation is simple and honest. Do not take this as something to believe. Take it as something to notice. Watch how life responds as you soften your grip. Observe how time reshapes itself when you stop trying to shape it. Let awareness be the hand. Let time be the fabric, and allow the unfolding to show you, in its own quiet way, how life begins to arrive, not according to the clock, but according to truth. When you live from that place, you may find that time no longer asks you to hurry. It asks you to be present. And in being present, you discover that everything that truly matters arrives exactly when it can be lived.